Oh yes, the TOG land battleship has found the sea. It's TOG o'clock, baby. Dur, 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 dur. How do you like my homemade sound effects? Oh yeah.
Looks like that one.
Righto, welcome to Captain George's Armory. Your eyes do not deceive you. This is the mighty TOG. We are going to take a look at the TOG today. The TOG is an interesting tank. It's generally regarded as an utter piece of crap, and that's not entirely unfair. You'll notice my TOG doesn't have a crew. As a premium vehicle, one of its major advantages is that you can train other crews in it. So I actually use the crew of my Churchill Mark 7 in my TOG. The Churchill Mark 7 is my only other British heavy tank. Any British heavy tank crew can go into the TOG, just like any German tank destroyer crew can go into Dicker Max. Any Soviet tank destroyer crew can go in a SE-100Y or a SE-12244. You get the idea. So I use my Churchill crew in the TOG. I don't have two loaders for the Churchill, so I have a dedicated TOG loader, but that's just so that I have a full crew. When I get to the point where I need a second loader for my British tanks, I'll have the TOG loader all geared up and ready to go. Now the TOG is a Tier 6 premium heavy tank, and its attributes are pretty terrible in a lot of ways. One thing that's great about it has 1400 health, which is good because the way this thing tanks is by just eating the damage. If you were playing a game like a more traditional MMO, like with the Holy Trinity of classes, this thing would be a face tank. It doesn't mitigate the damage; it just eats the damage. The TOG's really heavy and it has a terrible engine, so it's slow as death. It's a 14 kph. It's only 1 kilometer per hour faster than the T95. So basically, the TOG can't move, and it's a giant target. It's got horrible traverse speed, and it's got awful armor. The front armor is 76 millimeters on the hull, which is terrible. It's got a little bit of slope on it, but you're almost never going to bounce shots. 76 on the side, which is giant, and 50 on the rear, but 50 might as well be 76 because it's garbage no matter what. The turret is slightly better armored, but it's still pretty crap. 114 on the turret front, 76 on the side, and 53 on the rear. So the turret's pretty terrible as well. The view range is pretty standard. Radio range nobody cares about. The TOG's bonus attributes, though, that it has are this ordnance quick firing 17 pounder gun. It's actually really, really good for a Tier 6 gun, for a Tier 6 heavy gun. So you can see it's got a really high rate of fire, 12 rounds per minute. The penetration is not outstanding, but it is very good for a Tier 6, 171 penetration. Now if you compare that to some other Tier 6 tanks, the German 88mm has 132 millimeters of penetration. The German L70 75mm gun has 150 millimeters of penetration. The guns on the Sherman Jumbo and Sherman EZ8, the M1A2, those have about 150 millimeters of penetration. The M6 heavy tank gun, the penetration on that is about 160. The Soviet heavies, the KV-1S and the T-150 and the KV-2, I have about 170 millimeters of penetration, I think. I can't remember off the top of my head what the pen is on the 107 millimeters ZIS 6, which I think the T-150 and KV-2 use. But 171 is pretty good. The other thing is the average damage. The average damage is fairly low, but the rate of fire is quite high, making up for it, giving the TOG pretty respectable damage per minute. You can put the hurt out with this gun. It aims really fast at 2.3 seconds, and it's fairly accurate at .36. Much more accurate than Soviet guns. I think it's actually probably more accurate than the German guns. I'm just going to compare that to the L70 because the L70 is really accurate. Okay, so the TOG's gun is slightly less accurate than the L70. So you can see that the TOG's gun is actually really good. Because the TOG's gun is so good, and because you have 1400 health, what you have to do is you have to get yourself into a position where you can just park, preferably in cover, because you're so massive, and just blaze away at targets. And the bad thing is the TOG's so slow, it's really hard to get to the cover, and because it's so slow, your team will just leave you behind, and then I'll die. And a lot of the time, you have trouble influencing, well, preventing that from happening just because you're so slow, you can't get into the action quick enough. So a lot of the times what'll happen is you'll get overwhelmed by like 4 tanks all at the end. And even though you have really high DPM and a ton of health and you're killing them individually very quickly, there's 4 of them and you have no armor. You're not going to bounce any shots. You're just going to eat all the damage until you die. Artillery and howitzers absolutely wreck this thing because their shells are almost guaranteed to penetrate your terrible armor, and you take critical damage a lot. My driver or gunner dies pretty much every battle. Your tracks are just always knocked off with this thing, but half the time you're not even moving anyway because you're so slow, so that doesn't really matter. And the gun gets damaged pretty often. This thing just gets smoked. To help it with the DPM, I actually went and bought half-price equipment when it was on sale, and I put on a gun rammer and vents. I'm not bothering with the 3rd slot because this thing's a mediocre tier 6. I like to sarcastically refer to it as the HMS, or not HMS, as the USS Impregnatable, which is obviously kind of a weird play on impregnable and impregnate, which is sort of vulgar, i.e. you can penetrate it. You get the idea. My friend Alex Truslow in college used to name his British warships, things like that, and we would play tabletop naval strategy games like Warhammer Historicals and stuff like that. So that's where that came from. Viewers of the Mighty Jingles will know that he calls his TOG HMS Pointless. So again, stealing from the Mighty Jingles is kind of my thing, I guess. So that's how I do my TOG. And anyway, we've been in the garage way too long. We'll take a look at a replay now. This was a frustrating battle because I'm in a tank that's immobile, and I end up trying to hold both flanks and the middle by myself. So yeah, lots of fun. Oh, and also, if you're in a match with the TOG, don't try to push the TOG. I'll mention that in the replay. The TOG's just too heavy. All you do is damage yourself and you waste your own speed advantage. So don't try to push the TOG, and do not take cover behind the TOG. Like, when we're in the fighting, take cover behind the TOG, that's fine. But when we're leaving the base, and we're 2 seconds out of the base, if you're hiding behind the TOG, you're an idiot. That's it. If there's no danger and you hide behind the TOG, all you're doing is you're making the TOG driver angry. And then the TOG will shoot you. Okay, the TOG driver probably won't shoot you, but they'll really, really want to. So anyway, enough rant, enough garage, let's get to battle. So here we are in the TOG 2 on a standard battle on Parkerovka. Parkerovka is one of the oldest maps in the game, and it's really frustrating to me personally because oftentimes the best way to win is to put a token force in the woods here and make a strong push through the valley, or the village I mean, and if you can't clear the hill, you can't win the match often. As of late, a tactic that's been common is to hold this ridge, which is kind of odd, and I think it stems from the fact that the team that starts in this base has such a better position to get to the hill that it makes it really hard to win with a more conventional tactic. But my team is declaring that they're going to hold the middle and rush the middle, and I'm trying to get them to clear the village so that I can go up there and not just get smoked from the sides, because The TOG's such a giant target that you need to be really well screened. Now, these people are annoying the crap out of me. If you see a TOG, do not push the TOG. The TOG is too heavy to be pushed. All you do is you damage yourself and waste your own speed. So we have 3 fast mediums that should already be really far up, and because they've been dicking around with my TOG, they haven't even got out of the base yet. So, there you go. They just lowered themselves to the weakest link. That's not good. I haven't even made it out of the base because I'm so slow. When the immediate threat appears, the enemy's pushing hard down the 2 line, and so since I'm so slow but I have a good gun, I'm going to stop and I'm going to give these guys fire support, try to put my good DPM to work, because really the only strength the TOG has is just ridiculous DPM. It's got a lot of health, but considering every hit you take is going to reduce your health, that health isn't really that big of an asset. It means that instead of taking 2 or 3 hits from a KV-1S like every other tier 6, it means that you can take 3 or 4 hits from a KV-1S or 2 hits from a KV-2. It's good against stuff like that little T-28 over there. He'll have to shoot me all day. But no tier 6 has a problem with stuff like that. So you can see what I'm doing is I'm just sitting here and firing away as fast as I can at whatever is spotted and in my line of sight. Because at this point, my team's thrown away deployment, and I'm too slow to react. All I can do, my only recourse left is to just bunker up and hope that we don't get crushed on both flanks. You can see the DPM of this gun right here as I'm firing at this KV-1S. And I'll go into sniper view. I don't really have a very good shot at him, and you can see he's about 350 meters away, so that's actually pretty far. But this gun is able to put out mostly hits at this kind of range, and it's pretty accurate. So I was able to do a couple of good hits to him in succession and help save the AT-2. And here's where problems really start for me. There's a Cromwell poke in the ridge. That's not good. I mean, I'm on full health. It'll take the Cromwell about 10 shots to kill me, but the Cromwell's the type of little fast tank that can literally drive circles around me and just kill me. So I pull up behind this rock. The idea being that way it'll be harder for the Cromwell to kite me around, because he'll only be able to kite and damage me on 3 sides instead of 4, and I can work the cover to my advantage. And I try to shoot the Panzer IV. First shot misses, second shot takes him out, and the Cromwell thinks this is his opportunity. He goes for it. I put one into him as he approaches, put a second into him as he comes around the rock. He shoots me in the back. He takes a big hit from our 3.601, puts a second shot into me. I come back around the other side of the rock. 1, reload, and 2. Alright, Cromwell dead. I took on about 450 damage there. So I took about 450 damage, but at the same time I dished out 500 damage or so. So that was actually a fairly even exchange. Now there's a Sherman and an A-20 coming. Now the Sherman is the much bigger threat. With his derp gun, he can kill me in 2 hits. So I need to get rid of this Sherman, and the best time to do it is while he's getting into position. His derp gun is so inaccurate, and as long as I keep my front towards him, and not because of the armor, because of the smaller target area. If I keep my front towards the Sherman, it should be a lot harder for him to hit me on the move. He unwisely chooses to ignore me and allows me to take him from behind. So I'm incredibly frustrated with my team right here. I'm doing good. I've got 4 kills. I'm carrying in the stupid TOG, but I'm trying to hold both flanks and the middle by myself. This Panzer IV comes over, puts a howitzer shell into me. I put 2 into him. He backs up. He's playing corner games now. This Panzer IV knows he's got the advantage. There's a derp Sherman behind me that had hit me before for about 300 damage. It's not looking good. That derp Sherman can move up on me. If the 3.601 can keep me covered from the derp Sherman, that would be great. The derp Sherman's moving up. The Panzer IV is choosing this time to make a go for it. He blinks first. Dead TOG. So That was a pretty frustrating game in the TOG. Not really the way I like to do things. Not really the result I like. You can see shards of my tank flying through the air, and it's not like the derp gun shells have a hard time penetrating the TOG because it's so poorly armored. But even the TOG's crappy armor is good enough that some of the standard HE rounds should actually have trouble penetrating it. Like maybe a 50-50 where they don't pen. But nobody uses standard HE in Tier 5 derp guns, so it's an auto pen of a Tier 5 that'll, it'll 4-hit me. I guess in fairness, I 4-hit them, but, my advantage is that I use my massive health pool and DPM to allow me to survive their hail of tiny shots. But when they're not firing a hail of tiny shots, when they're firing shots that do the same damage as a Tier 8, 9, or 10 tank, that's not such a valid tanking strategy now, is it? So that's the TOG for you, strengths and weaknesses. It actually does have strengths. So yeah, we'll get some videos of good tanks up later. That was all for this one. So Captain Dorja here with Captain Dorja's Armory. And just remember, you can never have enough big guns.